has been more about Netanyahu than preserving the Israeli entity. The damage that he's done to Zionism and to the entity called Israel is greater than any other person on this planet. It's the regime is despised across the world, and it is now being blamed for a war that is leading the world towards an economic crisis. So no one should expect Netanyahu to change course at this stage. He will do anything possible to make sure the deal collapses and that the region goes back to war. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, because Trump is not someone who I even try to predict. Whenever I'm on a program and they say, what do you think Trump will do? I say, I have no idea. And even on Iranian television, whenever I appear and they ask me the same question, I say, I have no idea, go ask someone else, because I really have no idea. I've given up trying to understand Trump a long, long time ago. I don't follow his tweets, I don't follow his speeches. Maybe if someone sends his Truth Social post to me, I'll take a look at it. But it's just, it doesn't help me understand anything. Whatever I read, I know that it may not be relevant 15, 20 minutes from now, let alone an hour or two or a day or two from now. So it is quite possible that the tensions will go back to the periods, what we've been experiencing during the last 3-4 months. I would not rule out war at all. I would not rule out war. I don't know if I'm connected or not, but I wouldn't.
No, you are.
Rule out. Okay, I would not rule out war at all. I would not rule out military conflict. And I think that if there is no progress at the negotiating table over the genocide in Lebanon and the Iranian assets that were supposed to be freed and have not been freed, as well as the sanctions waivers that were supposed to be declared but have not been declared, then I think Iran will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And if the Israeli regime renews attacks on Lebanon, then I think the chances for a missile strike from Iran are very high. So anything is possible. On the other hand, it's not impossible for me to envisage a situation where suddenly Vance says we've salvaged everything and the Israelis will stop shooting and they'll withdraw in some areas for now, and then some agreement will be made over the financial issue and the waivers. That's possible too. I find that to be less likely because if they had the will to do it, they would have done it before this trip. But anything is possible at this stage. And I'm not good at predictions. So if you ask me to predict, whatever I say, well, the opposite, you can assume that will happen.
You did a post earlier today that a lot of people were talking about, where you said within hours of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, the Zionist regime agreed to a ceasefire and stop killing Lebanese children, which is true. That's what happened yesterday. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz within 2 hours, I think it was. And we got reports of a halt of military operations in Lebanon. What seems to was happening, what I saw what was happening before that, before I keep reading your post and ask you a question, it seemed, I felt that Israel's already accepted a ceasefire. Axios reported a US official telling them that the Israelis, Netanyahu, did accept a ceasefire, but it seemed he wanted to achieve one military victory before he seizes fire and capture that hill. There's a big hill next to Nabatiyeh, which is considered a Hezbollah stronghold, and they were bombarding it very heavily. They couldn't get to it. They're trying to go around it to encircle it. And then the Iranians seemed to be fed up. They didn't want to give that leeway to Israel to capture the hill. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. Netanyahu was like, all right, we'll declare ceasefire. But I think they changed the map before declaring the ceasefire, and they included that hill in the security zone. So there's a bit of a power struggle happening right now about that one hill. Now you posted, I'll read your post again. Within hours of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, the Zionist regime agreed to a ceasefire and stopped killing the Lebanese children. By morning, Iran gradually reopened the strait Trump now issues hollow threats to claim credit for the opening, but the timing says otherwise. And the reason that post, a lot of people were sharing it, is the IRGC, or we got reports that the IRGC did close the Strait of Hormuz. So did they reopen it? Is it still closed? What is the situation right now in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I don't know about now, because every 5 minutes something new is coming out. So it's I can't say. As I said, that we're living in a madhouse. Before the program, I told you, if whenever just like you, I'm quite willing to get off this roller coaster whenever they say it's over. But we're on this roller coaster. So after the Israeli regime declared the ceasefire, then the Iranians, I think in the morning or near morning, I don't know exactly, but they gradually lifted the siege, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, because the Iranians want the deal to work. They want the genocide in Lebanon to stop. They want the occupation of Lebanon to end. They want the agreement to move forward. That's what all these negotiations were for. And what is extraordinary is that the Americans they were negotiating for weeks, and then finally, when we have an agreement, stage one, they're unwilling to move forward. And then Trump threatens Iran, he says the negotiators are never going to get back, whatever that means. Then he says Iran will be wiped out, another madman statement. And then he's going to take the strait, put in a toll of 20%, and all the other nonsense. So who knows where things are now, because we'll have to see if the delegation is going to continue to negotiate. Are they going to return to Iran? Are they going to sit there and wait and see if the United States changes its mind? It's just, right now, it's for me, it's absolutely unclear what will happen. But this does show the state of affairs in the empire. An empire that is rapidly on the decline. It has lost the war against Iran. Before the show, you were talking about the polls carried out among Israelis, where there's an almost universal consensus that Iran won the war. So the United States lost this war, lost the siege warfare, and thus that was reflected at the negotiating table. But now we're hearing Trump say things that are completely contradictory to what he's agreed to. We're hearing people close to Trump saying that we're going back to war. Perhaps, perhaps not. I don't know. I can't comment on that. But therefore, it's really impossible for me to say anything. I mean, I'm willing to make a guess, but I will assume that the opposite happens.
To confirm your point, breaking news just now as you were speaking. So according to Israeli media, according to Israeli army radio, Trump has instructed Netanyahu to order a partial Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. We saw reports of that before, about an hour ago, that Israel, according to Channel 12, I think, that Israel was considering a partial withdrawal, which includes the Beaufort Castle, that very symbolic castle, which would be an embarrassment for Israel to withdraw from that territory, including that castle. And that would be horrible politically for Netanyahu. But it seems that the pressure campaign by the Iranians walking out of the negotiations and closing the Strait of Hormuz has worked. The Iranian pressure has succeeded. Trump instructed Netanyahu to order a partial Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. That's quoting exactly what Israeli army radio was stating. That's pretty significant. That is extremely significant. I made very optimistic predictions, Professor, early in the war when Trump was talking about wiping out a civilization. For me, I'm like, guys, this is a good sign. He's not going to wipe out a civilization. He wants to off-ramp. When a ceasefire happened, I'm like, guys, I think it will include Lebanon. And then when Lebanon happened, I never assumed Israel will start withdrawing out of Lebanon. I thought that would take months. The fact that we're looking at Israel withdrawing now from Lebanon is wild to me. And also the contents of the MOU, I knew it would be very favorable towards Iran, considering Trump's position, but not to that extent. It's honestly, this is what we're going through right now, I don't care if someone's pro-Iranian, pro-American, pro-Israeli, just looking at things factually. I did a post earlier today. If you something along the lines, if you admit your country lost a war, it does not make you unpatriotic. It just makes you factual or honest. And honestly, what we're witnessing right now just seems unprecedented to me. I don't know what it will lead to, but it's just so unusual for the region. For Israel to be withdrawing out of territory because Iran asked them to, that's just crazy.
Well, first of all, we have to see what happened. We have to see if this is confirmed. I don't know who reported this, but still things are unclear. I in general, as I was joking earlier, I don't make predictions because I think predictions don't help. The only thing I was sure of from the very beginning, as I'm sure you know, was I knew that Iran would win the war. And I knew that Iran would outlast Iran and outlast Trump in siege warfare. And I knew that Iran would get a favorable deal because anyone who looks at the facts on the ground would recognize that. And in fact, patriotic Americans should be glad that it ended this way because Trump, the warmongers in the United States are not working for the American people. They're working for the Israeli regime. The war in Iraq, the war in Libya, the war in the dirty war in Syria, the genocidal war in Yemen, and the list goes on. None of these are to the end, in Afghanistan. None of this is in the interest of the American people. They spent probably trillions of dollars collectively, including the damage done and the expenditures are in the tens of trillions of dollars. The damage of this war alone, I'm sure it's in the trillions already when you look at the damage it's going to do to the economy. What is patriotic about this foolishness, about this inhumanity, about supporting genocide? Being patriotic means that you want your country to do good, not to support a genocide in Gaza. You know, I said this on other shows and some of your viewers will roll their eyes. But again, I stress people should go and read the book, Going to Tehran. You should read the book, Going to Tehran, by Flint and Hillary Leverett. They both worked in the White House. They both were somewhat high-ranking officials. And Flint Leverett was in charge of the Middle East. Hillary Leverett was in charge of the Persian Gulf. That's where they met, and that's where they got married. After coming out of the White House, Flint resigned over the Iraq War, so a principled person. Hillary's Jewish, Flint a Catholic. They wrote a book on Iran, their views on it. They learned more about Iran. They wrote a very good book about Iran, about many of the myths of the country that is said in the West, by Western think tankers and Western media. And then they said that, look, if we do not resolve the issues between Iran and the United States, it's going to lead to a dangerous place. And what happened to them? These are the patriots. This Jewish woman, this Catholic man, these are the patriots. Both of them were demonized, both of them were marginalized, and they disappeared from the think tanker world. And why? Simply because they were saying, let's not have war with Iran, let's move towards rapprochement. The Democrats, the Republicans, everyone demonized these people. And they turned out to be right. And if they had listened to them when they if they had read their book and listened to them, we wouldn't be where we are today. That's what a patriot does. That's what a person with character and decency, that's what a person who has honor does. They tell the truth and prevent you from doing what is foolish. A patriot doesn't root for a country to go to war if it's an unjust war. A patriot does the opposite. But in any case, I have no idea what's going to happen. We'll have to see how this plays out. But Mario, at the end of the day, why is the United States so hostile towards Iran? It's because of Israel. Why is Iran opposed to Israel? Because I said this to Piers Morgan on his show. I asked him a question. I said, look, do you accept the legitimacy of a state that is founded upon ethno-supremacism? And he said, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't get what you're saying. And I asked again, I rephrased it. And I asked him a third. He wouldn't answer. And since then, he's invited me a number of other times. And every time I remind him that you were unwilling to answer that question. This is the issue. This evil Iran, and again, people should read Going to Tehran. Also, Alistair Crook, who was on your show, his book Resistance, that is another book to read. There are good books on the nuclear program. Peter Oborn's book, A Dangerous Delusion, and Gareth Porter's book, Manufactured Crisis. These 4 books are very good. These are the good books that I know. But when the United States pushes for conflict with Iran, the foundation of it is Iran's opposition to ethno-supremacism. That is it. Iran has Jews. In this city, we have Jews. In this, very close to where I am now, because I'm at the Al Mayadeen studio. I came here early for your shows because I wouldn't have time to come from home. Very close to where I am, you have at least 2 or 3 synagogues. We have a Jewish MP, and we have kosher restaurants in Tehran and in Isfahan, probably elsewhere too. I don't know about other cities. Iran has never been anti-Jewish. They bombed a Jewish synagogue during the war in Tehran, the Israeli regime. Why? Because it's anti-Zionist. So who are the anti-Semites? Of course, the Palestinians are Semites, but who are the real anti-Semites? So the problem that the United States has with Iran is not a bilateral issue. Even though the US carried out a coup against Iran in 1953, supported the Shah as notorious secret police, supported the Shah during the revolution when he gunned down people, supported Saddam Hussein, gave him chemical weapons. All that is true. But as we speak, there's nothing that prevents normalization, not peace, normalization between the 2 nations, except for Israel. I'm talking about something far bigger than just peace. So that is the problem. And the problem is that Iran is guilty of saying no to ethno-supremacism. You would think that in today's world that would be something that everyone would agree upon. But no, in the West, they are fully supportive of ethno-supremacism. So this is where the fault line exists. But in any case, the Iranians have signed this agreement. This agreement can lead us to a stable global economic situation. But now that it's signed, the Americans have to apply. They have to implement the deal. The Iranians immediately implemented the deal. They opened the strait. Perhaps they shouldn't have, because usually the Americans do not see Iranian actions as a sign of goodwill. Whenever Iran shows goodwill, the Americans interpret it as weakness. This is the biggest problem we have with the Americans. Whenever in the 1990s, after they supported Saddam Hussein, Iran gave Conoco, the oil company, an oil field in the Persian Gulf. Mr. Rafsanjani, who was the president back then, the late Mr. Rafsanjani, he said in an interview that this was a green light to the United States. What happened? The U.S. imposed sanctions on Iran. And it just goes, as we move forward. And on every occasion when the Iranians move to ease tensions, the United States, instead of seeing it as goodwill, they said, look, they're weak. Let's hit them harder now. The JCPOA was another example. And so I don't know, maybe the Iranians made the mistake of implementing the deal as soon as they were supposed to do so. Maybe they should have waited a couple of days and then grudgingly opened it so that the Americans would think otherwise. But I don't know why it is that the Americans just will not carry out their obligations in any agreement that they make with Iran. This time around, though, there's a difference. And that is that Iran has huge leverage. Iran is prepared to go back to war. Have no doubt. I don't like war. I've fought in war. I've seen war in Lebanon. I've seen war in Syria. I've seen war in Iraq. I've seen war. And I've been shot. I've survived 2 chemical attacks. I have shrapnel wounds. I know what war is. But Iran is ready for war. Iran is ready for siege. It doesn't want war. It doesn't want siege warfare, but it's ready for it. So the smart thing would be for Trump to continue to de-escalate. But I have a feeling that the Zionist lobby in the United States is giving him hell. Yesterday, what's his name? The senator said he spent 4.5 hours with him.
Oh,
what?
I don't know which
you
one.
know, the one who's known to be
Graham?
His claim he's gay. Yes, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham said I spent 4.5 hours with him yesterday. Well, and so he said I predict that the deal will collapse and then we'll go back to war. That's what he just said a couple of hours ago. Sorry, that's the only thing
really?
I remember.
He said that?
Yeah. He was on, I guess, Fox News or something. But he said, he said I was with Trump yesterday for 4.5 hours, and I predict the deal will collapse, and then we'll have war, and the U.S. will take the Strait of Hormuz, and, well, good luck with that. The Iranians are more than prepared to fight it out. And you're in Dubai right now. I wonder how it's going to feel like fighting in, like, what? With 100% humidity and 45% heat, 40 degrees Celsius.
I wouldn't be surprised you will be visiting Dubai very soon. I think relations between the Emirates and the Gulf, Saudi, etc., and Iran are going to improve a lot faster than everyone predicts. I've been saying this for a while, and I still stand by it, because geography is geography. Those countries have all done business together. They have disagreements. They've done business together, and they understand the new reality. I also don't think any of the Gulf countries advocated for war. Now, what they did during the war, different ones pursued different strategies. I don't think none of them advocated for war, including Saudi, which I think people said went.
Well, I think I told you this once before. I mean, it's not just an issue of geography. During the war with Saddam Hussein, the country among these countries, Oman aside, among these 5 countries, the country that had the best relations with Iran was the United Arab Emirates. It's only been in recent years that it's become increasingly hostile towards Iran. Iran doesn't want bad relations with any of these countries. In fact, in some respects, Mohammed bin Salman has been a lot better for Iran because he has not been supporting the Wahhabi and Takfiri groups like his predecessors. He hasn't been doing that. And ironically, Qatar, which is a Wahhabi country, its main mosque is named after Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, they support these extremists more openly. So it's not as if a better relationship is not possible. Iran wants an excellent relationship with all of these countries. And look at Oman. Oman chose not to get involved, and it's reaping the benefits. So there's the problems that exist are because of the empire. The empire divides and the empire rules. They promote sectarianism, they promote racism, they promote hate and hostility, and they've succeeded, not just in our part of the world. But why wouldn't Iran want to have excellent relations? So much of the world's wealth comes from the Persian Gulf. And when these countries have good relations, when they invest in one another, when they move back and forth, that wealth circulates. It makes the region more powerful. That's what the United States does not want. That's what the Israeli regime does not want.
I found a quote by Lindsey Graham yesterday. I spent 4.5 hours with President Trump on Friday. If this deal fails, Trump is going to take over the Strait of Hormuz by force. If Iran contests control of the Strait of Hormuz, we'll obliterate them. I think this is more a political statement, and he's kind of being Trump's lapdog, the one to make threats for him. I don't think there's anything to it. I don't think the discussions were about going back to war. And while you were speaking as well, Netanyahu was speaking. He first says, Mark Levin spoke before him. He says, thank you, Mark Levin. I wish I could use you as my advisor every day. It's just effing wild for me, Professor, how people like this are not considered traitors by the United States of America. You know how bizarre this is for people on the outside, watching people like Mike Huckabee says the U.S. would not exist without the state of Israel. And then people like Mark Levin being praised as another prime minister of another leader of another country says, I wish you were my advisor. It is all just so bizarre. And now Netanyahu then said the following: in the US, they say that Trump does everything that I ask him to do. And in Israel, they say I do everything he wants me to do. Neither is true. We are leaders of independent and proud countries. I stand for the interest of Israel. But if you look at action, also while you're speaking, there's the IDF Home Front Command has announced that all restrictions put on northern Israel are to be lifted starting 6 a.m. tomorrow, signifying the success of the ongoing latest ceasefire. A full day has passed without any firing by either side, blah, 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 blah. But when you have action like this, it kind of cements the ceasefire. Now, obviously, there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical. We don't need to go through all of them.
By the way, just for the record, even though whatever I haven't made predictions in years, and not because I'm afraid of making them. There are too many things. There are too many variables. But I agree with you. I don't think Lindsey Graham is what he says is necessarily what's going to happen. I find it hard to believe that Trump will go back, although he could, that he will go back to open warfare, because that will crash the global economy. It won't be a recession. It will be a Great Depression worse than the 1930s. And that will be the end of Trump. And it will be the end of many things. It will create a dystopian world that no one wants to see. But I'm not ruling it out. But I don't think that he'll go there. And I think that's the reason why, when Iran was about to strike the Israeli regime when they bombed Beirut the last time, that he immediately gave those concessions to Iran to get it over with. But then again, it's Trump, so he's not stable. He's not someone who, he'll say one thing now, tomorrow morning he'll say something different. So I can't predict what will happen. But what I'm saying is that the likes of Lindsey Graham are there. And the Zionist lobby will do whatever they can to reignite war, or to create circumstances which will ultimately lead to war. And that is an important thing to keep in mind, that they may not be able to drag us down towards war directly, but they can create circumstances which would lead to war. And that's something that we should be we should keep our eyes open about.
Agree. I wrote down two good questions. I'm going to enjoy asking those. The first one is actually one good question, but let me get this one, get your opinion on this first. You mentioned earlier that the Iran could strike Israel. I've been debating this with guests on whether it's an interesting point, because if Iran strikes Israel, it could be a good deterrent, because I don't think the Americans would get involved. But others are arguing this is what Israel wants. This is the trap. They're trying to trap Iran by getting Iran to strike Israel and dragging the US into it. And one of my guests said, Mario, I don't think Iran would strike Israel because they don't want to fall into Israel's trap. So that's why they closed the Strait of Hormuz instead. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
I agree to a point that Iran doesn't want to restart the war. Iran doesn't even want to close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran wants this deal to move forward, and that's clear. But Iran won't sit back and watch the Israelis bomb Lebanese villages and cities every day and see every day 100 people slaughtered, because the West doesn't care. Western media doesn't care. Western journalists don't care. Mainstream media journalists. You don't see any of these famous journalists in the West tweeting about the Lebanese kids who are being slaughtered, or the families who are being massacred one by one, two by, just like we didn't see it in Gaza. They don't care. Or if they do care, they don't care enough, because they'll lose their status in mainstream media. So we have no option but to do something about it. So we have, I guess, two options. One is to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and the second is to strike the Israeli regime. I don't know which comes first, but what Iran wants is just the genocide to stop. Whatever makes it. So Iran doesn't want to re-engage in war with the United States. It's prepared to do so if that's where the Americans push it. We've seen how Iran fought for 39 days and how in the skirmishes Iran hit back very hard. But what we need to have is to have the genocide in Lebanon stop. Now, some people tell me another question. I thought you were going to ask about football, because Iran is playing Belgium in less than an hour. And in 15 minutes, actually. But if I'm correct,
that means you have a very very hard stop in 15 minutes, non-negotiable hard stop.
Exactly. Although I hope they win, but it's Belgium after all. But one thing that I think is that people ask me, which is a valid question, is what about Gaza? So Iran, there's a difference between Gaza and Lebanon. Right now, there's a genocide taking place in Lebanon, an invasion of the country. In Gaza, I know the ceasefire is fake. And ever since Trump's fake ceasefire, 1,000 Gazans have been martyred and more than one child a day. I'm saying this to remind people that evil things are happening in Gaza every day. But the problem with Gaza is that the countries in the region, sadly, they went to Egypt with Trump and endorsed his fake ceasefire, an unjust, unfair, ugly ceasefire. The heads of state of Jordan, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Egypt, Morocco, leaders from the Persian Gulf, Pakistan, I think even Indonesia, from across and non-regional countries. The British Prime Minister, they all went there and endorsed this. And when the Iranians say that the Israeli regime has to leave Gaza, Trump says there's an agreement. Whenever they say they have to keep the killing, his people say there's a ceasefire. And none of these countries that went and endorsed this ceasefire in Egypt, none of them are screaming and protesting and demanding something to be done. So to a degree, Iran is pushing for Gaza in the talks. Because I've spoken to negotiators. During the next 2 months, the Iranians will be pushing for Gaza. They've also spoken with the political wing of Hamas and told them that they're going to do that. But right now, the situation in Lebanon, there's a genocide going on. They've occupied huge parts of the country. The Iranians want to make sure they go back. And Iran will not move forward until the war in Lebanon stops, because that is the first article in the MOU. And if the United States refrains from carrying out the first article of the MOU, then the whole thing is going to fall apart. Because if they can get away with not implementing one article, they'll do the same with the rest of the articles. So Iran, for moral reasons, has to be steadfast, and for practical purposes as well.
Agree.
And not practical. I don't know what the word is. My English isn't all that great.
There's also strategic
purposes. Yeah, for strategic purposes, it has to be implemented.
Exactly. That has a strategic for the MOU not to fail, but also strategic for Hezbollah to rebuild. Hezbollah has proven a very effective forward line of defense for Iran. So I think Iran strategically needs to make.
But also, I mean, even if we put ideology aside, the ethno-supremacism and the fact that Hezbollah and its supporters have made unprecedented sacrifices for another people, because it's all for the Palestinians. They're making these sacrifices to prevent the Israeli regime from overrunning Gaza. And what Hezbollah has done is unique. But the point is that even if you put morality, ideology, all this aside, if you and I have a business deal with the third party, and we sell them a car and they don't pay us the money, and then they ask to buy another car from us or something else from us, we'd be fools to agree with it. They first have to make sure that the first part of the deal is carried out before we move on to another transaction. So if they don't implement what's on at Article 1, then nothing will be implemented.